Hey, Brendan, I'll take the intros out of the commercial breaks, and then I'll pass it off to you.
The following is an America Matters media production. The views expressed do not necessarily represent those of the station or its advertisers, although we think they should. But that's the opinion of America Matters Media.
This is not America. Sha-la-la-la-la. Little piece of you.
It's a case where we cannot let this. We've never allowed any crisis from the Civil War straight through to the pandemic of 17, all the way around 16. We have never let our democracy take second fiddle. We can both have a democracy and elections and at the same time correct the public health.
So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Talking Truth to Power. I'm your host, Leland Faegre, and we have Brendan. Where are you?
Well, I'm at home. I'm awaiting the delivery of my life savings because I'm rolling over my IRA to a gold and silver IRA. I think that's a good idea.
Yeah, but you can't be here for the show?
No. I mean, I don't want to miss this delivery.
Where are your priorities?
Well, there's certainly different priorities from what's going on in Washington, D.C., especially with the vice president.
Yeah.
You had a clip from his campaign in the basement there.
Yeah, he delivers a lot of very important information from his basement these days. And so, we're right there. We have our Talking Truth to Power reporters on site, and when something happens, we've got them. Okay.
Well, one of the biggest things Russiagate is collapsing. It's becoming Obamagate as we speak right now. We're getting so much more information every day. And one of the things we understood was that one of the former VP's phone calls with the former president of the Ukraine, Poroshenko, was recorded. And we just found out that exactly what we talked about on Talking Truth to Power months ago is what happened. That he agreed not only to halt the persecution of the Burisma with his son on the board, but he was also demanding that Poroshenko raise the tariffs on the gas in Ukraine. And that's all on tape now. And, the poor people of Ukraine, which is one of the poorest countries in Europe, if not the poorest, they used to at least get their heating oil and their cooking oil virtually free because Burisma was able to do that because they had some sources of oil right in their own country.
That's right.
And the IMF, as part of their austerity, whenever they get a country in its grip, they demand austerity. They demand higher taxes and fewer services in order to get these governments back on track. And so one of it was that Biden demanded a 75% tariff on the gas, the oil, and Poroshenko was so obliging, he said he'd give him 100% tariff. But of course, we know Poroshenko is as corrupt as can be, as corrupt as Biden, I guess. And we know that he was going to skim the difference for himself.
He's got a nice
dog-faced pony soldier.
Yeah, he is. And you know what? He's got a nice place. I saw his place, an aerial view of it. Quite a spot, huh? Poroshenko?
Well, he's a real oligarch. He's a chocolate oligarch. Mm-hmm. He owns chocolate processing factories in Ukraine.
The Ukrainians love chocolate.
Oh yeah, they do. Actually, they love coffee. If you ever go to Ukraine, there's like every main street has 4 or 5 little coffee dispensary, little coffee outlets.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, they must love coffee because every place has a bunch of those.
Now, here's an idea. Do they ever put coffee and chocolate together?
I don't know. I didn't ask, but that's a good idea.
Just came right off the top of my head.
Yeah.
Well, so what else have you got there up your sleeve?
Well, we know that Flynn pled guilty to false information, or he gave false information to the FBI supposedly, but we know it was a perjury trap.
How about that writ of mandamus, huh?
Yeah.
How about that mandamus writ?
Now, what Flynn told the FBI is technically called an exculpatory no. And there's a big dispute. People are not being made aware of it over whether it should be a crime to like Martha Stewart is another example, whether it actually should be a crime to lie to the FBI. And this this argument over exculpatory no's has actually reached the Supreme Court 3 times.
Mm-hmm.
And each time the liberals have dissented. The conservatives have said it is a crime, but the liberals have said, no, it should not be a crime to deny that you did something to the FBI. Let them make the case.
Well, that's where it's going to go again if this writ of mandamus is unsuccessful.
I'm not sure what you mean by the writ of mandamus. Can you tell me what it's about specifically?
It effectively subordinates those that are seeking power and relegates them to virtually nothing. The Justice Department decision will stand. That will be the end of it.
Oh, you mean to remove the judge?
Well, the judge doesn't have to be removed,
or
but
to have him step down or change his. Yeah, I mean that's
the case. The case will be dismissed effectively, which is what the Justice Department was seeking to do in the first place.
You know, we're going to have another Jews in the news.
Oh, I can hardly wait.
And one of them is going to talk about a remarkable article in the Huffington Post by a Sephardic rabbi criticizing the Ashkenazi rabbis and their interpretation of the Talmud.
Now, which segment are we planning on doing that? Do you know?
We'll go into that, but it's called Pilpul, Pilpul, and that is what this judge is doing. In my opinion, it's completely legalistic without any moral substance.
Well, he's effectively become the jury and the prosecutor.
Yes,
you know,
and or he's appointing a prosecutor, which he can't do. That's another way of looking at it.
Well, he's also doing that apparently. Yeah, exactly. What a scene, isn't it? It's so embarrassing.
Yeah, and
so here's the choice.
The main call. I think we're running out of time. I guess we'll bring it up after the break.
Yeah, we're coming in to a commercial break, so stay right where you are. I still don't know where you are, but stay there anyway.
Okay.
Just a really good guy. The term good egg isn't enough to describe him. He's also certified.
This is America Matters Media on AM 1180 KCKQ, a Lotus broadcast station. The power of radio since 1967.
To join the conversation, call 844-790-TALK. That's 844-790-8255. Now, back to the show.
We have to take care of the cure. That will make the problem worse no matter what.
Words to live.
Oh boy, creepy Sleepy Joe.
Quintessential. Welcome back to Talking Truth to Power. I'm your host, Leland Faegre, and my co-host is Brendan Trainor, and he's just a few miles away, but for some reason he couldn't get in here this morning.
All right. Keep on slinging the mud at me, Leland.
Well, I'm running out of mud, actually, so...
All right. So what I was talking about was Pilpul or casuistry, is that the judge is trying, in the Flynn case, he's trying to say that because Flynn said he wasn't coerced when they were threatening to prosecute his son,
right? Because
he told the court he wasn't coerced, he's trying to get him on a contempt of court charge.
Oh, is that where it's going?
Yeah, that's one of the things that it's going to, and that is pure casuistry because, in my opinion, that's Pharisaical trying to get somebody on the letters of the law when there's a large moral question involved about the essence of the law or the truth is a typical Talmudic trick, in my opinion.
Right.
And this judge, and unfortunately, the legal system in America is just full of it for a lot of people.
And Sullivan reveals just how corrupt the judicial can be in this country.
Yes, he is. He is revealing that. Hopefully, like you said, it'll get straightened out. But we really need to break up the Federal Bureau of Intimidation and Entrapment.
Yeah, we do.
Known as the FBI.
Very important. Yeah, well, I think their purpose here is just to drag this out. They know what's coming. They know that the Durham investigation is going to yield fruit and is going to be very, very difficult for them to negotiate the rest of the electoral calendar with that on their plates all the time. So that's what this is. This is their last gasp, I think.
I hope so. Yeah, I hope it is. But, getting back to the FBI themselves, it's and Trump has fired the first shot across their bow. You're aware that he has taken away some of the FBI's power already by denying them the opportunity to access raw intelligence. Now they can only access the finished intelligence, the summary of what the intelligence agencies have said.
Is that through Grinnell?
And they no longer can brief a candidate about security issues.
That's right. Yeah, that just happened, late last week, was it?
Yes. So that's the first shot across the bow. But just getting rid of Wray, I don't think they're going to get rid of him, but or getting rid of these bad apples at the top, it's not good enough. Like I disagree with Senator Kennedy of Louisiana. He keeps calling the FBI the world's greatest law enforcement agency, and that's just another example of false American exceptionalism. The FBI has a very spotty, even bad record in a lot of ways.
Oh, going way back. Going back decades. There are all kinds of examples of abuse of power.
They mishandled Martin Luther King. They failed to stop the JFK and RFK assassinations. Mm-hmm. They murdered women and children at Ruby Ridge and Waco.
Yep.
The whole Whitey Bulger fiasco in Boston, where they put innocent people in jail.
Which was Mueller.
Yeah, false accusations against Richard Jewell.
I have to cringe every time I hear someone like Kennedy, Louisiana's Kennedy, or say Lindsey Graham or Trey Gowdy, throw extraordinary praise upon the likes of, say, Mueller, as an example.
Oh yeah, Mueller turned into to be nothing but a scarecrow. He was not anything. He didn't even know what the investigation was really about.
It was Andrew Weissman's investigation with Mueller's name on it, is what it was.
Right, exactly. So one of the suggestions was just put in the American Conservative this week, and that is to break up the FBI into several agencies that are just assigned a specific task. Like this person says the DEA, the Drug Enforcement Administration, despite all the problems that they have as far as the war on drugs go, at least they're not concerned with overthrowing an elected president. That's not part of their agenda. So his suggestion is to break up the FBI into something like, maybe intelligence or maybe crimes, certain crimes. Each crime has its own task force, and get rid of this whole encompassing agency that investigates everything, because they can't be relied on. They have a culture. People don't realize that. Sometimes on the cop shows that you watch on TV, I know you don't watch much TV there, Leland.
No.
Sometimes on the cop shows in the movies, the FBI is presented in a bad light. And they, because they try to horn in on local police. And that is the case more often than not. They're very arrogant.
Are you talking about the reality shows?
Yeah, no, just the normal cop shows, like, the different police shows like Law and Order and Chicago PD, very often, and in the movies as well, the FBI is presented as very arrogant and condescending to local police, and that is really the truth more often than not.
Yeah, I think it is pretty accurate. That's what we've learned over the past few years.
Exactly.
So you're suggesting that what someone is recommending here is we compartmentalize the FBI into headings
different
agendas?
Different agencies in charge of different crimes, only different crimes, and that way they don't. We got to humble them somehow.
Oh, absolutely.
Well, even the FBI crime labs are not as great as they claim. I mean, they botch evidence in many high-profile cases. You remember the Unabomber, Ted Kaczynski, that was mailing letter bombs?
How can I forget? He had a little shack up in Montana. I went by it a few years ago. I didn't realize I was driving by.
Yeah, well, the FBI completely bungled all the evidence in his case. And finally, the prosecutors had to get a private crime lab to process the evidence. And that's not the only time. They bungled the Randy Weaver in Ruby Ridge. They bungled quite a bit of evidence. They're not as reliable and as competent as they claim to be. So,
but this is going to be
that we'll get something done about that. We'll wait and see.
Well, this is going to be very difficult. Bureaucracy like that to be broken up is going to take a while. It's not going to be an easy thing.
Well, at least, like I said, they've been given some kind of a brushback here by President Trump, and they've lost a little bit of stature. And we'll see. We'll see what else can be done about it, if anything.
Well, if you listen to Sean Hannity, he claims that he has a law enforcement background. I guess his parents did, and he talks about it, quite extensively. And,
right.
And I think his point is that the rank and file bureau, those guys in your local field offices, they're okay. It's everybody above that level that has completely corrupted the institution.
Well, power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely.
And that's what you've got at that federal level on that seventh floor.
So it may be true that the rank and file are so good, but how come we get all these entrapment cases against these low IQ Muslims? Where they keep giving them bombs and instructions on how to use them.
They're trying to bait them, I think.
And then they arrest them and claim they broke up a big terrorist ring.
Right. Yeah, that's a tactic they've used quite a bit. In fact, that guy down in Vegas who used to spend a lot of time across the street here at the casino is one of those people. Apparently, I think they were trying to bait him, weren't they? Isn't that?
Yeah, I'm not sure you're referring to, but yeah, I mean that's why I call them the Federal Bureau of Intimidation and Entrapment.
Yeah, no, it's a good name.
Yes.
I'm with you on that. Yeah, the name escapes me, but the one that produced 58 killings in that plaza there in Las Vegas in October 1st of.
Okay,
2017.
Yeah, the Mandalay shooter.
Yeah. So there is some agreement that was what was going on there, which is why they had to put that thing down so quickly, and there was never any investigation that yielded anything, literally nothing.
Right.
Because they had their footprints all over that.
All right, and I don't know. We don't have too much time in this segment, but. Did you know an Italian member of parliament has called for the arrest of Bill Gates?
No, but, yes, I did hear that about 1 or 2 days ago. Yes, I did hear about that.
And, but I do have to criticize the president a bit about this swine flu, the warp speed vaccine initiative. Mm-hmm. 30% of Americans are already saying they won't get vaccinated. And that's... interesting because the man he appointed to head that was the man who he may not know it because all this happened in Europe, not America, but he's the one that put through the swine flu vaccine that caused at least 1,000 people to get brain damage, and that was rushed through as well.
You can't remember his name. It wasn't the guy that was isolated in the Plandemic video that's viral now. Is that the same person?
Well, no, I'm talking Moncef Slaoui, Slaoui.
Okay.
He's the one that is the head of the Warp Speed Initiative, and And a lot of Americans are, are anticipating that they're going to resist getting vaccinated if they produce a vaccine.
Yeah, I don't think it's mandatory yet. We'll be back after.
Hi, this is Eddie Floyd. Let me tell you about my favorite non-profit public charity, Wainema Wild Horse Sanctuary, located on the Forsythe Ranch in Hallelujah Junction area. And please go to www.wainemaranch.com. That's WYNEMA ranch.com.
This is America Matters Media on AM 1180 KCKQ, a Lotus broadcast station. The power of radio since 1967.
Are you shy and don't want to talk on the air? Text us your questions or comments to 775-237-2266. Now, back to the show.
Welcome back to Talking Truth to Power. I'm your host, Leland Faegre, and we have Brendan off-site. We still don't know where the hell he is, do we? He's out there somewhere.
Okay.
And my co-host, Brendan Trainor.
I just want to say one thing, Leland.
Huh?
Elliot Abrams, step away from that cell phone.
Oh my gosh, whatever he is. I mean, he just destroys everything he touches, doesn't he?
Yes. So we had this Operation Gideon fiasco where the a security firm called Silver Corp, with the CEO's name was Justin Goudreau, and they apparently signed a contract with Random Guaido, the pretender to the presidency of Venezuela, who was cheered by both houses of Congress during the State of the Union address.
Uh-huh. He happened to make an appearance there.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if he was signing the contract when he was in Washington that time.
It does make you wonder, huh? I mean, why would he have to come all the way up here for that?
So they had 300 mercenaries from Colombia, and they had a general lined up, but I think that was the general that somebody accused of being involved with drugs, and he actually had to fly back to Washington, a Venezuelan general that turned against Maduro. Mm-hmm. And he was very upset about that. So that was the first thing that went wrong with the operation. And then they were tweeting. Goudreau tweeted to President Trump that they were on their way. They all had American IDs.
Yeah.
And
geez, I wonder where they got those.
And they had their passports on them. I think the Venezuelan fishermen alerted the police to them, and they were caught instantly. And it was just they were lined up. And it was just a big fiasco. And the only question is how much did Pompeo know about it? I mean, he has plausible deniability. He's trying to say he didn't know anything about it. But we have paperwork that has Guaido's name on it.
Yeah, I'd love to be a fly on a wall in any kind of discussions about what they plan to do with Venezuela, because none of this makes sense, and it's embarrassing.
I know, $200,000 to pull off a coup, and
which didn't happen.
I understand they didn't get the weapons until like the day before the assault.
It's like the Bay of Pigs fiasco under Kennedy.
Exactly. And then it's interesting too, but if you look at, there's a photograph of the mercenaries. They're on the ground with their hands behind their head, and the Venezuelan, guard is there with their guns. Mm-hmm. If you look closely, one of them has peed in his pants.
Well, yeah, I wasn't looking that closely, but the next time I see it, I'll take it.
By a commentator.
It was quite a spectacle. I mean, how many of those guys were there? There seemed like 20, 25 of them against the two Americans leading the so-called assault.
Well, there was supposed to be 300. I don't know if they were all captured. At least a couple were killed in the attempt. There were a couple of casualties, including one of the primary Colombian operatives, I think, was killed. The 2 Americans weren't killed. And so, Pompeo was saying, oh, we had no notion of this. We had no idea that they were doing this, but please send them back to us.
Yeah, right.
Send the Americans back.
Well, what do you think the objective was with a ragtag group like that? What could they have possibly done? What was the first priority of their...
Apparently, they said they actually believed that the Venezuelan National Guard was starving. They weren't getting fed, and they were just ready to turn against Maduro. All they had to do was show up, and they would get all the support they needed to capture Maduro and bring him to the airport so he could be extradited to America to face drug trafficking charges.
I see. Okay. Well, these people know this kind of thing. Who are we to tell them with it?
Well, yeah, but how many cowboys do we have? I mean, we have a lot of these guys, I mean, quite a few. We have quite a few hardcore neo-Nazis in both the police and the army, especially now that we're so involved with Ukraine, and they're going over and meeting the neo-Nazis in Ukraine and training them and getting trained. When I say quite a few, I don't have any numbers. It's probably, a small amount, but there are some of them. And, they're just looking for that. It's like a guy that puts all his money on the roulette wheel, on one of the numbers on the roulette wheel, hoping that he'll get lucky. And that's what they're looking for. They're looking to become national heroes and make a fortune.
Well, those are not good odds.
No, they're not good odds. No, not at all.
And another thought occurred to me that I recall from the story, because it's now about a week old, or maybe more now, is that those guys had special operations backgrounds, didn't they?
Yes, they did. Yeah. So, and that's what I'm referring to. I mean, we're going to in the next segment, we're going to talk about another security corporation that has been unmasked, although it's not American, it's Spanish, and the relationship to Sheldon Alderson and the Sands Hotel in Las Vegas, which is a very interesting story. So stay tuned for that. But it's just another example of things that are going on. Iran is sending a couple of tankers. I heard it was gasoline. I don't know why they're sending gasoline, but they're sending some kind of petrochemical to Venezuela. And, Pompeo is tweeting out, they're not welcome. We don't welcome them. But if he actually tries to intercept them, that would be international piracy, because there are no sanctions between Iran and Venezuela if they want to trade back and forth. But it's also a little payback. Iran is giving us a little payback for our interference in Iraq and in Syria by doing this. And that's an interesting scenario. We'll see what happens with that, if anything, over the next week.
Now, it wouldn't just be a tanker filled with supplies that they need, would it?
Well, I think I'm not sure. I don't know if anybody is absolutely sure what's in their tankers, but it's something that they need to jumpstart their refineries, I think. The gasoline refineries in Venezuela, they need some kind of petrochemicals to do that. And Iran is trying to supply them with it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So
well, yeah, that's an interference. Those are the kinds of things we don't want to see happening on the world stage.
No.
Elliot, you catch my reference there to Elliot Abrams?
Yes.
Member of the Council on Foreign Relations. That Elliot Abrams?
Yes. I mean, all these people are CFR, or the vast majority of them.
Well, even some that are not members oftentimes walk in the same circles. They're fellow travelers. Right. So, like Pompeo is not listed as a member. But some of these people have legitimately absolved their membership in the Council on Foreign Relations. And we have to encourage that kind of thing. Newt Gingrich, the analyst contributor to Fox News, Jack Keane, quite a few. K.T. McFarland used to be a member of the Council on Foreign Relations.
Yeah. And, KT was also unmasked, right? She was also involved in that whole thing.
And you can sure sense her animus against these people. It's really going to be a very interesting year as all of this development unfolds for us.
And well, KT was supposed to be Flynn's deputy.
She was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, Flynn, he's not did you know what the whole argument was between Flynn and Obama and why they hated each other?
Yeah, what was it that Obama mentioned to someone that the two things you had to worry about the most was North Korea and
Michael Flynn.
And Michael Flynn.
Well, Flynn was totally against Obama's drone war. And he thought that all it did, was just a body count. All it did was Muslims and cause and grow the movement, the jihadi movement.
Interesting.
Like these Muslims, many of them innocent.
Where was the source of that that you just cited for our listening audience here?
I don't know if I have the exact source. I read so many sources, but apparently that's why when he was director of intelligence under Obama, but then he had the big falling out with Obama.
That was the reason.
He wanted more, hopefully police action. I don't think he wanted boots on the ground as far as armed force.
That must have been a problem for Obama for sure, huh?
Yeah, he wanted more, capturing and intelligence, capturing jihadis and getting intelligence, not just killing them by drone.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And so that was the big thing. Now, I don't know how good Flynn would be. Like I said, he seems to be much better on Russia than the Democrats are, but as far as I can see, he's also a hardliner on Iran. But you might come back in the administration when this is all said and done.
Yeah, that's going to be part of anybody's portfolio that comes in at that level to an administration, regardless of who it is,
All right. So we're almost done. We have another segment of Jews in the News coming up.
I can't wait.
Destination Midtown. Experience the difference. Reno's premier shopping extravaganza. Everything imaginable.
This is America Matters Media on AM 1180 KCKQ, a Lotus broadcast station. The power of radio since 1967.
Want to expand your advertising dollar? Sponsor this or any America Matters program by calling 775-827-8900, extension 2. Now back to the show.
And welcome back to the last segment of Talking Truth to Power. I'm your host, Leland Faegre, and we have Brendan Trainor offsite today. And what have you got for us? What did you say you wanted to talk about in this next segment?
We have another segment of Talking Truth to Power's Jews in the News.
Jews in the News.
And of course, I have to give the mandated disclaimer. The ADL requires that we say that Israel is our greatest ally and our only democracy in the Middle East, and they don't throw gays off of roofs. And we always and everywhere, no matter how often we find Jews misbehaving, ultimately it's our fault.
Okay, right? I've alerted security, so you've got the stage.
All right. Well, the first thing is that court documents in Spain show that Sheldon Alderson and his Sands Casino in Las Vegas, and probably his casino in Macau as well.
He has one in Macau as well? He has a casino in Macau as well?
Yes, he does. He has a big casino in Macau. So Alderson's chief of security turned during a security conference at the Sands Hotel. They turned the security firm known as UC Security, which is a Spanish firm, that was charged with guarding, what's his name? Oh, God. Assange, Julian Assange.
Oh, okay.
They were in charge of guarding Assange at the Ecuadorian embassy in England, and they turned them into a CIA operation. I'm sure there was a lot of money involved, and so they were this firm called UC Security is now in court in Spain, and because the Spanish are upset about the whole Assange affair.
And you think there was a lot of money involved?
Well, I would assume if they're going to turn somebody.
Huh.
So they were spying. They turned the CCTV cameras in the embassy.
Yeah.
They turned those into spy cameras instead of security cameras.
Shocking.
And spying on Assange when he was talking with his attorney and other things. Assange has a partner. They call her a partner, a woman, and 2 kids. And they were trying to entrap the kids to get their DNA, hoping to say that they weren't really Assange's kids and they were part of some kind of spy operation.
Yeah, that's the way they operate, yeah.
And they were also spying on former Congressman Dana Rohrabacher from Orange County.
Because he's real cozy with the Russians.
Yes, he's friends with the Russians, but he was also trying to broker a deal with the administration that if Assange could prove that the Russians did not hack the DNC servers, that we would let Assange go. So they were spying on him, and they were involved in, arresting Assange and dragging him out of the embassy in London. So we now know that also Sheldon Adelson's luxury yacht was docked in Quito, the capital of Ecuador, during this operation. So he was in touch with the new administration in Ecuador that turned in Assange, and I'm sure he promised them lots of deals as well.
Well, I'm sure he was practicing, I hope that he was practicing distancing, social distancing while he was doing that.
Well, that was a while ago. That was before all this happened. But, Assange is in that London jail, and that's a cesspool of COVID, and he's not healthy to begin with. And the only thing they really have on him is basically jumping bail.
They don't have anything on him. They don't have anything on him because the charge was false.
Right. So they should release him, even with an ankle bracelet or something. He should be released, but they're not going to release him, which, is again putting his life in some danger there. And then the second thing, Jews in the news, is that there was a remarkable, really courageous story published in the Huffington Post. And this was written, there are several sects in Judaism. There always have been. And the primary sects are the Sephardic Jews and the Ashkenazi Jews. And the Sephardic Jews, none of them are genetically linked to the Hebrews in any of the Old Testament in any significant way. So they're all proselytized, they were all converted to Judaism. But the Sephardic Jews originated in what is now Iran, and then they migrated across northern Africa, and they wound up in Spain. They were in Spain there for a long time, and that was Spain and Portugal, the Iberian Peninsula. And so that's one of the major sects. I think they probably have about 40% of Judaics or Sephardic Jews, and about 50% are the Ashkenazi Jews. They're different. They came from the Russian steppes. There was a Jewish kingdom at one time called Khazaria. The greatest mass conversion in history. 40,000 of these steppe dwellers, they actually originated in Turkey, but they moved up north near the Black Sea, and they formed a kingdom called Khazaria that lasted for a couple of hundred years, and then the Kievan Rus, the Vikings that were the original inhabitants of the Ukraine, they conquered them around 1000 AD. And dispersed them, and the Ashkenazi Jews have hated Russia ever since. But at any rate, this Sephardic Jewish scholar is what he described as pilpul. And he says that's, he blames it on the Ashkenazi Jews. It's referring to the rabbi's use of clever but unsound reasoning, especially in relation to moral questions. In other words, he says that the Ashkenazi Jews interpret the Talmud in their own way to justify what they're doing. In other words, they use false logic and reasoning.
Shame on them.
Yes. So, but it's remarkable that this would be in a major American publication. This whole controversy.
Yeah, very much so.
But Alan Dershowitz, he utilized pilpul when he recently declared that you have no constitutional right to not be vaccinated.
Yeah, I saw that story.
Yeah, so this is like the use of a double negative to hide the deception in the statement. And the article actually calls out Dershowitz by name and also Noam Chomsky, the leftist Ashkenazi Jew. And it says that that's a lot of the problem with the Middle East is that all of everything that's rational has been removed from the conversation, and all that's left is yelling, irrational emotionalism, like calling people anti-Semites, and ultimately threats of violence. So that's interesting. If any of our listeners are interested in the truth and how the truth is normally distorted, I know up in Montana, Reverend Baldwin, Chuck Baldwin, he has a Judaicization. And unfortunately, the more you look into it, the more you see that the original American culture has been largely Judaicized. And then there's a couple of other stories where Jews were not in the news when they should have been. Like one of them is the role of Jared Kushner in the Flynn affair. He's the one that had Flynn make the phone calls in the first place, and it was not really even about Russia. That was a side conversation. It was really about trying to convince the Russian ambassador, Sergei Kislyak, to veto a resolution against the settlements in Israel, and the Russian ambassador did not. And then as a side conversation, he was talking to him about the sanctions that Obama put on him. But nobody is, nobody's focusing on the Israeli aspect of it.
Why is that, Brendan?
Pardon me?
Why is that?
Because I think you're laughing at basically, the Israelites can get away with whatever they want to get away with. Except for one, Jonathan Pollock, the spy that.
Yeah, right. They nailed him.
He's still in prison. They can't get him out. But basically, they can do whatever they want. Nothing happens to them.
Yeah.
And then the final one that we're not hearing about in the news is that Facebook is suing another security firm. We've got a lot of these security firms called NSO, and they are saying that NSO is undermining their talking apps that they own. The NSO is owned by former Mossad agents. The WhatsApp app, that's the one. And they're putting malware in the WhatsApp app so they can listen in on different people, at will.
The rascals.
Yes. And also, the same firm that, not the parent firm of NSO was using the Pegasus program to spy on Trump in the White House. They were using stingrays that mimic real cell phone towers to divert calls to them that are coming out of unsecure lines in the White House, hoping to get information on Trump and others in the White House dealing with national security. So, of course, everybody in the established is going to say these are merely conspiracy theories, but these are two incidents that Israel is doing to spy on Americans were not in the news when they should have been.
Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for joining us for another edition of Talking Truth to Power.
Yeah, we'll get. Yeah, oh yeah, that's the upshot, isn't it? You know, all that sacrifice, and then they still didn't turn up for you. So. Yeah. Okay, Brendan. Thanks.